welcome to this live reading from Grace's Ghosts by Stephenie Wilson Peterson, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Ghost Girl. I'd never been afraid of ghosts. Actually, it was quite the opposite. I was more comfortable with the dead than with the living. The many ghosts of the tiny mountain town of Tansy had followed me as long as I could remember. Ghosts, unlike people, never bothered me a bit. It was the living with their cliques and their judgment who made my skin crawl. 6th grade hadn't been easy for me, not that any year of my education had been pleasant. Let's just say that kids who see the dead weren't exactly considered cool at my school. My outsider status with the living was well established. I was the strange kid who talked to people who weren't there. But the living citizens of my town were the ones who were missing an entire world. I was the only one who knew Tansy's biggest secret. You're never truly alone in this town. Though few people live here, thousands spent their afterlives here. I managed to avoid uttering a single word to another living person for the first half of my last day of 6th grade. Slouching in my chair in the back row, I hoped to go unnoticed by the other kids. Less than 3 hours of school remained before summer freed me from their torment for 8 whole weeks. Most of the time I didn't mind my outsider status. I had friends. They just lacked heartbeats. It was hard to be the weird girl in school, but I always had my cat Midnight by my side, rubbing up against my ankles with some bratty kid tormented me. Midnight was dead. He didn't run in front of a car, die of old age, or get attacked by a coyote in the woods. He had always been dead, at least as long as I'd known him. Midnight was a ghost. Since only 204 people lived in Tansy, the school was tiny. The same 7 kids had been in my grade since kindergarten, and even though they lumped all of the 4th through 6th graders in one classroom, there were still only 20 students in the room. You'd think I'd have a shot at ducking under the radar and just chilling with Midnight, who was, as always, curled up in an invisible ball by my feet. But that wasn't possible in Tansy. Tara Gleason and her pack of annoying cool girls knew they wouldn't get a chance to torment me for a while. Just after lunch, Tara made sure to make me suffer one last time before the term ended. Tossing her blonde braid over her shoulder, she sauntered up to me, snatched my yearbook off my desk, and flipped through it. My shoulders tensed, but I didn't dare speak. I just stared at my tormentor with my jaw set. "Well, let's see. Who signed Grace's yearbook?" Tara said in a mockingly sweet voice. Has Holly signed it?" She paused, pretending to search for a signature she knew the book didn't contain. "Nope, Holly didn't sign it. What about Amy?" She didn't either. Lily didn't. Sophie didn't." Tara turned a few more pages. "And you know I didn't sign it either." She added, her voice turned cruel. "Almost no one has signed your yearbook, Rose Grace. I think the only one who signed it was Bane." She cackled and shot a look at the only kid in class who ever said a kind word to me. Bane Bello was a bit of an outsider. He fit in with the other kids a little better than I did, but he tended to speak in riddles and rhymes, always wore black, and kept his hair long, which made him stand out from the other kids. While the other kids teased Bane, it never seemed to faze him. The result was that they ignored him more often than not. I wouldn't call him my friend, but he was always civil to me. He smiled weakly and shook his head to me to let me know he thought Tara was a jerk. "That's fine," I told Tara, reaching for the book. Midnight hissed at her, but his protest found its way to my ears alone. No, that won't do at all. We must sign your yearbook." Tara turned, strutting back to the front of the classroom like she was on the catwalk, and her blue and yellow cheer uniform was all that. My stomach sank. I tried to convince myself it wouldn't be that bad. Maybe she'd just write something generic like "Have a good summer," but my gut said otherwise. Giggling wafted through the classroom as Tara and her posse passed my yearbook back and forth all afternoon long. The hair on my arms stood on end with each high-pitched squeal. Those girls were up to no good, and I was powerless to stop them. And this time I was truly on my own. Sometimes when a kid barked rude comments at me, the ghost of Thomas Meyer snagged their scissors or knocked their notebooks off their desks. Once, when Tara tripped me in the hallway, the spirit of Polly Hansen pulled her seat out from under her no less than 6 times in an hour. Many of the spirits looked out for me during the school day. Of course, the bully never knew they'd lost their pencil because of a paranormal prank, but I always smiled slyly while I watched their hopeless search. Other than midnight, however, the ghosts were absent from school most of the day, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Sometimes they did this when I had an important test to take or some other reason I needed to concentrate. It's hard making it through the school day with ghosts all around. It made me stand out even more than I already did. Even if they did make me seem like a freak, the ghosts were my best friends. For as long as I can remember, spirits surrounded me. The ghosts say I babbled at them nonstop as an infant. As a toddler, I played hide and seek with my ghostly friends. While most kids cried on their first day of kindergarten as they parted ways with their mothers, I didn't mind at all. 5 spirits accompanied me on my first day of school. My stomach flipped when about 20 minutes after the final bell, Tara dropped the book back on my desk, leaned in so close to me I could smell her cherry chapstick, and whispered, "Fixed it." I stared at the yearbook like it contained the Ebola virus. I avoided reading it for several minutes, trying to distract myself with midnight, wondering if I could spend some time with the ghosts after school. I ran my finger over the smooth, glossy spine of the book. It can't be that bad, I thought, forcing myself to open it up. It was even worse than I expected. Page after page was covered in insults. Gross Grace is a loser. Why do you always talk to yourself? Oh, right, because we all hate you. Dear Grace, I'm so sorry that you are so ugly. With all of your gray clothes and glasses, you look like an undertaker. Maybe your parents can give you a makeover for your birthday. You need it. Every single time my name appeared in the book, they crossed it off and wrote, Gross Grace. They'd added devil horns to my photo, the dark ink appearing to come out of my wild black curls. I sat looking at my own thin, pale face, my weak smile seeming to say, "What did you expect?" I noticed for the first time the reflection of a ghost on the lenses of my glasses. Everyone else probably thought it was the flash, but I knew better. Flipping through the pages, I read the insults again and again, hoping that somewhere within the book's pages I'd find something to make me feel better. But the notes only held unkind words, save for the short note Bain had left before Tara got her hands on it. Thomas Meyer appeared next to my desk just as I snapped the book shut. Where had he been earlier when he could have interfered? Or he could have at least comforted me while I waited to get my book back. "Hello, Grace," he said, smiling, oblivious to my pain. "Some of the ghosts and I have something to discuss with you. I don't want to interrupt your last day of school, so can we drop by tomorrow morning?" "Yeah," I told him as tears welled hot in my eyes. The bell rang just then, releasing me from my prison for the next 8 weeks. I headed home alone, glad to put an end to another horrible year at Tansy School. On any given morning, I expected to find a spirit or two waiting for me to wake up. The dead are chattier than you'd think, especially since I was the only one in town who could see and talk to them. But when I roused out just after daybreak on my first day of summer vacation, spirits lined my room from wall to wall. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The sheer volume of ghosts rendered me speechless. There must have been 100 of them crammed on top of my bookcase, floating above my window seat and pretty much filling every inch of air space my small, gray-walled room had to offer. I gasped, sat up in bed, and grabbed my glasses off my nightstand. A dozen or so ghastly faces floated just above my eyes, which, let me tell you, is a startling sight before the sun has fully risen. Everywhere I turned, more haunts wafted nearby, eagerly waiting in the early morning light. This wasn't how I expected my day to start. Puzzled, I wondered if I might be still sleeping. That's it. This is a weird dream, I thought as I yanked my heavy gray quilt over my face. Underneath the covers, I squeezed my eyes shut as tight as possible and prayed that I'd only imagined the horde of haunts in my bedroom. I didn't exactly expect my summer vacation to start this way, especially not at dawn. Inching out of the quilt, I opened my eyes just a slit and exhaled. Ghosts still filled every nook and cranny of my room. I shook my head, then shook out my sheets as if it might scare the spooks away. This, of course, didn't work. I knew it wouldn't, but I'm not exactly what you would call a morning person. These spirits were my friends, even if this overzealous early morning visit annoyed me a bit. I sat back up in bed. The ghosts rarely possessed this level of enthusiasm. The least I could do was listen. Before I could decide what to say to the ghost, Thomas Meyer floated to the foot of my bed. Thomas, a round-faced ghost who had been haunting Tansy longer than any of the others, died at only 14 years old. He gave off a youthful vibe, though technically he was over 300 years old. "Good morning, Grace. I told you a few of us would be by to visit, but judging by the expression on your face, you forgot." "That's right. I'd pretty much forgotten all about our conversation as soon as I got out of the school building the day before." Thomas, however, clearly didn't forget. He looked down at me impatiently as I thought about the previous day. "Right. Sorry. I just didn't expect so many of you." Midnight appeared on my bed and stared at me with bright eyes. "Grace," Thomas began, "you know that you're the only one who can see us, and no one else has as long as I've been dead." I nodded. Thomas continued, "I do not have to tell you that the spirits who reside in this town are ready to move on, and I think I've discovered what it is that imprisons so many souls in Tansy." My heart skipped a beat. I'd always known something wasn't right about my town. The spirits spent many an hour lamenting to me about being trapped in Tansy, but no one could ever give me an answer when I tried to figure out why Tansy was so different from other places. I sat straighter and tried to listen to what my friend had to say. "We are not supposed to stay in this spot for eternity. We're supposed to go on to the light, to heaven, to be with our loved ones who came before us. We've long suspected that we were cursed, but we could not prove it. Until now." "Cursed? As in witchcraft? Is that even real?" Too shocked to speak, I nodded at Thomas to continue. "A few weeks ago, Polly started haunting the bank. They have a large old attic space that's been unoccupied for a few hundred years. It's a nice gathering place for the younger spirits. One of my closest friends, Polly Hansen, who passed as a preteen, wafted across the room so that she hovered next to Thomas and nodded. I found an old letter up there. It was to the bankers from a woman named Lavinia. In it, she promised to curse the town," Polly said. "And you think she could have? Can people really curse one another?" "We're cursed, Grace. Why else do you think so many ghosts would be in a single town? Some of us never even lived in Tansy. Several of the spirits only passed through the town a time or two when alive, and yet they found themselves forever here in the afterlife," Thomas said, nodding to the permanently 6-year-old spirit of Jenny Duncan. Jenny died in a car crash when she was a kindergartner in the late 1980s. She'd only been to Tansy once before her death, but she'd spent more than 30 years in the town since her death. Her family had survived the crash, so she spent her afterlife missing them. Okay, I said, trying to comprehend his words. "So you're telling me that magic exists and I am supposed to figure out how to undo the spell?" I couldn't help but shake my head at the absurdity of it all. "Of course magic exists," he told me, as simply as he told me the sky was blue or that April comes before May. My head swam as I tried to come to terms with what he was saying. "You're cursed, trapped in Tansy. I guess that explains why I've never seen so many spirits in another city, and why so many of you don't have strong ties to the town. But what do you expect me to do?" A lump formed in my throat, and I swallowed hard, trying to push it and my fears back down. Thomas's translucent face twisted into a frown, and I knew I'd hurt his feelings. I took a breath and tried to explain myself. I'm just a kid, and I know nothing about magic. I don't think I can break a curse." "You're alive, Grace," Thomas replied. "That gives you all the advantage." I tried to consider what Thomas told me as the galley of ghosts chimed in with their thoughts and encouragement, which, to be honest, made it hard to think. "I need help, and you're the only one who can save us," begged Mrs. Mooney, an old woman who taught me piano back when I was 6 and she was, well, alive. "Please, Grace, I miss my Grammy," Jenny said, her high ponytail bobbing as she bounced. "We've been waiting a long time, Grace. We need your help," pleaded Polly. "We beg you," boomed Bartholomew Foster, his voice low and rattly. He was another one of my friends, a beefy kid with dark voids where his eyes should have been. Though I often wondered, I never dared to ask him what happened to his eyes. All of the eyes in the room stared intently at me, full of expectation. I didn't know what they thought I could do, but they seemed desperate for my help. If they needed me, I knew I would at least have to try. I looked down, squishing my soft gray pillow, trying to think of what I could do. "I want to help all of you, but I'm having a hard time understanding all of this. Curses. Magic. It's not exactly something they taught me at Tansy School. Another failure of the education system, Thomas sighed. Curses and magic are all over the Phantasma Mountains. Magic is woven into the very land upon which this town was built, but the dead are unable to do anything about it, Thomas said. And I can? My pulse quickened. You can see us and talk to us. You're also able to lift objects off the ground, to talk to the living, and leave the town, Polly said, her long ringlets bouncing as she spoke. Midnight let out a long meow and rubbed his back against my leg, sending a chill through me. I took in a breath and looked around the room at all of the hopeful faces packed in, like sardines, begging me to help them. They did not make it easy to say no. My stomach rumbled. As if my life isn't weird enough, now I have to figure out how to break a curse that may or may not exist.